CDN Technologies CEO Barbara Paluszkiewicz is here to dive into some news from Hewlett-Packard Enterprise, cold calling 201, and a very interesting vendor to watch, plus a special guest interview with IT Valuations CEO Reed Warren on navigating today's M&A landscape. It's ChannelPro Weekly number 219, Hair or Hairless? Hello and welcome to ChannelPro Weekly episode 219. My name is Matt Whitlock, technology editor, online director, and your host of this fine show for people like you, the VARs, the IT integrators, the IT resellers, the managed services providers, the IT consultants, the folks that do cybersecurity analysis, and so on and so forth. If that sounds remotely like something that you might do at your job, you are definitely in the right place. If you fight fires on a giant red fire truck, that's a dangerous job, and IT is far safer. So listen in, you might be up for a career change in the near future. But we're so glad to have you here. We do need firefighters, though. Let me just put that into perspective. Those are awesome people. But if you don't want to fight fires anymore, you can do this instead. Awesome show ahead. We've got a great co-host here who's on with us each and every week, executive editor Rich Friedman. Welcome, Rich.
And you know, Matt, make no mistake, everyone in the audience here is a firefighter. It's just most of them fight IT fires.
That's it. Yes, and that I'm sure they're doing a lot of those each and every day for sure. But there's a lot less physical smoldering with those types of fires, right?
I'm on fire, but I'm smoking hot. Sorry.
And then our guest host just has to get that in. We will get to our smoking hot guest host in just a second. But Rich, great to have you back. Why don't you give us a little run-in of anything that you've been up to the last week?
Well, I've been in Seattle this week. There won't be a lot of weeks in which I'm entirely in Seattle over the course of the next few months. But yeah, I'm home this week and then back out on the road next week.
And we got a lot of exciting stuff coming up in the event space. Of course, we've got to talk about that for just a brief moment. We got two ChannelPro events coming up, one online only and one in person. Tell us about those.
So coming up first part of next month, April 6th, I hope I'm getting that date right. That is our first cybersecurity online summit event. We're going to do two of those this year. So that's a virtual event, 100% dedicated to cybersecurity, hottest market in IT right now. All sorts of great content for you coming up there about the hybrid workforce and securing hybrid workforces and some of the latest tools and technologies for securing all the new kind of cloud-based workloads that are out there right now. I'm going to be moderating a session on cyber insurance, which I suspect will be heavily attended because people have tons and tons of questions right now about how do I get coverage, how much coverage is enough, etc. We have a visit. Colleen Fry, our managing editor, will be doing a one-to-one conversation with Ole Thordarson, who is our peer of the year at ChannelPro, and he has this really interesting kind of ransomware emergency response business that he runs. He's going to be talking about that. So tons of really great content at that event. You can learn more about it and sign up at events.channelpronetwork.com. And while you are there, you're going to want to also check out the next of our SMB Forum events. 2 weeks ago, we did our first event of the year in Newark, New Jersey. On May 4th and 5th, we're going to be in Chicago doing our second event. 4th is a pre-day with a cocktail reception in the evening. The 5th is sort of the main day for the event, and we're going to be talking about opportunities in Microsoft Azure. I'm going to be hosting a session that we call the Security Slam, modeled after Poetry Slams. It'll be security storytelling, but with a moral that you can actually put to work in your business. We've got the employee dating game session because hiring is kind of crazy out there right now, as we will discuss with our guest host shortly, but you can get some advice about that. You can get some advice about navigating the strategic landscape for MSPs, M&A, etc. Something else we'll talk about on the show at that event in Chicago. So events.channelpronetwork.com. You can see all of our events coming up this year and sign up for all of them. We'd love to see you at all of them.
Yeah, no matter where you are, the Cybersecurity Summit, you can attend because it is online, so you don't have to be anywhere, but in your office or home chair or on the couch or wherever you want to do a virtual event. Definitely you want to be there for that. And if you are anywhere in the Chicagoland area or anywhere in that general vicinity, you can sign. I'll get you a link to sign up directly. Go to channelproforum.com/Chicago. We'll put a graphic on the screen. So if you're watching on YouTube, hello, hit the like button, leave a good rating. But you can scan that QR code and that'll take you right to the registration form. Use promo code CPVIP. That will get you in the door for free. But I guarantee you, while it may be free in that case, you will get a lot out of it. That is a promise. So make sure you go and do that. Speaking of our awesome guest host, I've been so excited since she was last on to get her back on the show, and she is finally here, and she is awesome. She's the CEO of CDN Technologies, author of IT Scams: How to Avoid Being Ripped Off, and the talk show host of the No Tech Talk. Over the course of her career in IT, she's been known for her ability to present highly technical information in a clear, easy to understand manner. She's also a frequent guest on all the news networks and talk shows, and she speaks a lot on the dangers of ransomware and tech developments that save companies big money on their IT systems and critical data security. Please welcome back Barb Paluszkiewicz. Welcome, Barb.
Oh, thank you for having me. It's great being back again and seeing your handsome faces and hearing your very beautiful voies. It's great.
Oh, well, you're just trying to butter me up for something, and I say more. No, it is absolutely great having you back on because it was such a good show when you were here with us last time. But for anyone who might have missed that, tell us a little bit more about you and a little bit more about CDN Technologies.
Well, CDN Technologies, we're an MSP that's based out of Oakville, Ontario, Canada. And we are also the first and only Canadian MSP that has their CompTIA Security Trust Mark accreditation. So that means that we practice what we preach. We had a third-party auditor come in, basically say, yes, we follow NIST cybersecurity guidelines. We are compliant. We have our rules. We have our playbook. We're in place, and here is your seal of approval. So that's been our latest development here that we're pretty proud of.
Wow, that is really cool. And tell us a little bit more just about you.
A little bit about me. Still running, not as fast, but still running. I'm looking forward to getting back out on the water for rowing, but that won't be for another few months until things warm up. I still have 2 teenagers, and I now have 2 birds instead of 1. So we have our 1 bird jet. The other bird is called Kamikaze. So that's me personally. The team here has been growing, which is nice. And we've been having a good run here at CDN Technologies. Business has been going great. We're seeing lots of companies come back to life here in Canada as they slowly lift restrictions. We're still at a point as do you wear a mask or do you not wear a mask? Because our provincial government said that the date to not wear a mask is March 21st, but every municipality has its own end date. So at the end of the day, it doesn't matter what one government says or what another government says, people still have to wear their masks. But they have lifted the travel ban. So now I believe that we can fly out should we need to, and people are booking beautiful vacations that I've seen as I'm talking to people. So that's been kind of nice to hear, but business is great. IT's doing wonderfully, and no complaints here. What about you guys? How are things going there?
Well, you said you have 2 teenagers. I can tell you briefly that I had my daughter just recently turned 13. So I now have a teenager in the house, and well, she was kind of already acting like a teenager a little before that, but any advice on teens?
Oh, I was lucky that I had Jan Spring to talk to at trade shows when I went to, and she was a very good mentor for me. And all she said was, there's a light at the end of the tunnel. and it just is like, they come back to you, there's a light at the end of the tunnel. And I'm just like, okay, as long as I know that there's one there, that it's coming out, then I'll keep on trucking. Being a mother to teenagers is the hardest thing that I've ever had to do. The first time that as an adult, as a mature adult, that I feel the oldness of being mature, because it's a whole really. And as in the IT space, it's different, because essentially when we were growing up, electronics were introduced to us, Atari, ColecoVision, things like that. We started with social media. Our parents never had to deal with our alter egos or our online egos or personalities, whereas we have to, and we only have each other as peers, as other teenage parents to talk about this, to go through. And what I've learned is nobody talks about it because nobody wants to relive it. So that's why when it's over, it's done. And it's like that chapter's closed and you just keep moving forward.
Great. So I got 7 years of hell to look forward to, is what you're saying. So
pretty much, you have to start planting the seeds to get them off the payroll now.
Well, that is what I will do. That is good advice. So you talked about CDN Technologies a little bit. You talked about how it's growing, but you told a little funny anecdote at the beginning of the show when we started recording that you're not necessarily having a lot of luck hiring. What happened?
Oh my goodness. So I thought I would try something new in hiring and growing our administration team. Instead of hiring one person at a time, I thought I'd do a group hire. So I did this group hire where I had 4 people start. So I was onboarding 4 new employees. They weren't tech related. They were admin related. And they were all going to start on the exact same day. And sure enough, the day that they came for them to start, no one showed. So being Catholic, I naturally thought that it was my fault and I screwed up. But essentially, the day before, they sent an email, said, sorry, we've thought about it. We don't want to do it. The day of, someone said, I changed my mind. The next day, someone sent an email, sorry, this is not how I wanted things to go, but I'm not going to be starting. And then one went MIA. And I was just like, really? 4 people all at once? Okay, like live and learn. I'll probably still go through the process of having a group hire and a group orientation because I feel that that'll be a lot quicker to bring everybody up to speed. And then if you lose people, it's okay. But I've never had that happen before, but it has been a very weird hiring experience and the different types of questions. I was looking at bringing on an intern. And so this is like a university student. They're in their mid-20s. And one of the questions that they asked me was, I recently dyed my hair blonde. It's normally naturally black. Is that going to be okay? And I didn't even know how to respond to that. And all I said, well, at CDN Technologies, we are an equal opportunity hair or hairless employer, because I didn't want to, it was just such a weird question to get. And sure enough, like they never made it through the process of having more than 2 interviews. But it was just like, it's just been really weird hiring people lately.
But you could have had so much fun with that, though. You could have been like, well, we have to write a provision into your employment contract that states that you have to continuously dye your hair blonde from here on out. Or you just could have said, well, no, it's not okay. just to see what would happen.
And then have to deal with their mother calling me and like being angry that I didn't hire their child. No, I'm not saying that would happen, but essentially, I know that I'm not the only one, and I'm not the only space out there employer that is having difficulty hiring people and they're not showing up or not finding qualified candidates or that ideal candidate. I know that there's stuff happening out there, and I know that just like everything else, just keep on moving forward, one foot in front of the other, and it'll happen.
So
the other thing, just quickly, the other thing that, because this is the second time in a week that I've spoken to an MSP who has sort of hired in bulk. I was at this CompTIA event last week speaking with another former guest host of the podcast here, Paco Lebron, and he had just hired 2 people, and he had one position. He only needed one person, but he found 2 qualified people who both accepted an offer. And it's like, I'm just getting them both, like bird in the hand, basically. So I'm starting to hear those kinds of stories more often now. I should check in with Paco and see if either one of them showed up.
And ask them what color their hair are.
Yeah.
Standard interview question. Yeah, you'd think with 4, like you get at least 1 to show up. right? But that does seem indicative of the employment nature of these younger people. It seems that like they're just not as gung-ho about going to work. Is that what it is?
I think so, because if I look at my son, who's a teenager, he's 14. He'll always work, but he always wants to get paid more than minimum wage, and he's a great worker. So I think that as a parent, as an influencer in your child's life, I think you have to stop writing them checks, and they have to learn about money, because essentially at a certain age in life, you are more successful in your field. Your disposable income does become a little bit greater. And I think that you need to back off being a helicopter parent, and you have to make sure that your child can be a functioning member of society and be employable and have responsibilities and show up on time and know how to speak and things like that. So I think the best way to do that is to make them get a job.
Go to work, kids.
Yes, pretty
much.
Pay
your own way. Absolutely. So Barb, you do a lot of public speaking. You do a lot of appearances. You get on lots of shows. How did you kind of fall into that role? And do they call you a lot?
No, I hustle. No, I've been hustling. I've been in IT for just over 20 years. So CDN Technologies has been my baby for a while. And I've been hustling, and myself, as I've aged a few years back, I made the decision that it's probably a good idea for me to work on my public speaking skills, for me to start one-to-many selling, to do speaking engagements, to do events, because that's how you can get more customers quickly. I got this from when I was introduced to the channel, and I saw the vendors doing it, and the vendors bringing on speakers. And when you have a good acquisition process, when you have a good sales process in place, then essentially if you're a great salesperson, then you can do a one-to-many selling, and people get to know you. You're educating them, you're bringing them value, then essentially that your business can grow. So it was a marketing campaign that essentially I've just been working on over the years. The book has helped a lot. Being out in the public, being easy to speak to about IT security and IT support and IT services has always been there. So it's not like I've been one of these people that have switched careers and have worked 5 years here, have worked 3 years there. No, it's been 20 years that I've been at the helm of this. So it's always been my number one job.
And you mentioned that you have a book, and you also have a podcast too. Tell us a little bit about those.
The podcast is great. I interview vendors in the channel, and it's so that they can spread the word about how to keep the SMB market safe. It's great when you have someone else that has different analogies or different perspectives and a different voice, as opposed to it just being one voice, same old, same old, same old. So you can have a conversation. They're very quick, at 20 minutes or less. You talk about cybersecurity. The vendors talk about their products. I'm an outsourced IT company. So all the products that I use, they're outsourced. I come with my own tool belt when we need to work for our customers. So it's good for them to know that this is my vendor, this is what it is that they do, this is who they are, and so that they can hear the voice as well, so that they know that the products and tools that I'm using are legit. So that's how the podcast came to be. It's gotten a lot of traction. It's great. I would think that more people will eventually start picking it up. It's a very inexpensive marketing campaign to run, essentially you just need to be able to have a phone. Like you can do it on your phone now. So that part's pretty easy. The book came out over time. It's gone through a few edits. So I'm happy about that. That's helped with my credibility a lot, putting all of my everything onto paper. It took a while to do, tweaking it over the years, because after 20 years, things do change in the IT space. We all know that 1 year in IT is like 10 years in real life.
That's true.
So that's been great. And that's all helped to get speaking engagements as well. I do radio. So that's good. So people hear my voice. They see, we had a billboard up a little while ago. So that was pretty fun too. I think my kids were like highly embarrassed, but I was proud.
It's got to be surreal to see your face on a billboard.
It is a little bit weird. But it didn't really generate any the ROI, like, it wasn't there. So if anybody is looking at doing that, let me know how you do. Would I do it again? No, it's not a rinse and repeat when I learned my lesson and I can move on.
So one question about your podcast, because you said you talk to vendors and they kind of explain that. Do you position that show for an audience of your peers, or do you position that as for something for your customers to listen to learn about what you do?
For my customers.
Okay.
For them to learn about what I do. It's for the SMB market. So my target market is like small, medium-sized businesses, predominantly here in Toronto and Southern Ontario, the Greater Hamilton area, the Greater Toronto area, to talk about the products that we do, that we service, so that I can have stuff to populate my digital media campaigns with, so that they can see, hey, here we are, this is what we do. I'm not alone in this. Like, there are other people that do this as well. My secondary audience, I find, are MSPs, because they're just like, oh, okay, well, because it is a marketing campaign. So what is it that I'm doing? So that's been interesting to grow. And I know it's working because everybody can pronounce my last name.
Well, actually, it might be good for your peers to learn about some of the tools that you might use that they don't. So I could see some definite value there. So Rich, why don't we put a link to our podcast in the show notes? So folks who are listening, if they want to go to channelpronetwork.com, pull up the show sheet for episode 219, or on a lot of phones, you can just open up the description area on your device, and we'll put the links to that, her book, and all of the things that we're going to be talking about on the show right there for you. If you're watching on YouTube, open up the description area underneath the video, put all the links for you there as well. Make sure you hit the like button and the subscribe button and the little bell, and I don't know, whatever that YouTube makes you press now to like make things happen, but it's a lot of buttons. But do all that stuff and leave a good comment. Those go a long way towards that. So awesome stuff, Barb. I'm so excited to have you on, and we've got a lot of things that we're going to be talking about. And what are we going to talk about? Well, we're going to be talking about some news from Hewlett Packard Enterprise. We're going to talk about cold calling. That'll be an interesting discussion to have. We're going to talk about a vendor to watch. You'll have to stay tuned to find out which vendor that is we're talking about. And of course, later we're going to be joined by Reed Warren. He's the CEO of IT Valuations. We're going to have no doubt will be a fascinating discussion about navigating today's mergers and acquisitions landscape. That is something you don't want to miss. And of course, we'll have a lot of other things to talk about and more. It's going to be a wild ride, folks. So strap on in. Rich, let's start with the news. HPE has added something to make something better. What was that something?
Well, they've actually added a whole bunch of things to GreenLake. GreenLake is their hybrid cloud, IT on demand, pay-as-you-go platform. It's a way basically to buy HPE hardware and pay for it on an as-a-service basis. It's been hugely successful for them. It's been out a good 5-6 years at this point. In the most recent fiscal quarter, I'm desperately trying to call up this data here. In their most recent fiscal quarter, they reported that as-a-service orders were up 130%, 136% year over year. And again, this is not something that's starting from a small base. It was, released last year. So this is a huge growth product for them. A lot of different things that they've introduced this week, but there's one in particular that I kind of want to focus on. What they did was roll out 8 of these kind of bundles, these product bundles based around Aruba networking products. Now, Aruba is a business unit of HPE. This is the piece of the announcement this week that's most significant for our audience, because Aruba is a networking line that is kind of SMB appropriate, and there are probably a lot of folks in the audience who are familiar with Aruba for that reason. So you could actually get, it turns out, Aruba networking solutions on GreenLake in the past, but they pretty much only did that kind of on a quiet basis, sort of on a one-off basis, generally with larger customers, and HPE itself was really kind of in command of the process of customizing and pricing and rolling out those solutions. So the ability now to resell these pre-assembled bundles of hardware, software, and services is a brand new thing. And these bundles are specifically directed at the channel. So this is really the channel's first opportunity to sell Aruba via GreenLake. And the pricing, while not necessarily specific to SMBs, this kind of brings network as a service within range of SMBs for GreenLake customers. Now, we've been talking about GreenLake for years on the podcast. And in fact, I think it was last year we had George Hope, worldwide head of their partner sales, on the podcast with us. And, he has said to me in the past quite openly, we still kind of think of GreenLake primarily as an enterprise place. Like, it's going to be the bigger businesses that are more leveraged for us there. But we've been watching GreenLake kind of creep into SMB slowly year over year. And this is a relatively significant step in that direction, and a sign that there's more to come, basically. This is something, a way for you to kind of get into network as a service. Do it on the GreenLake platform, and do it at a price point that SMBs can afford. The HPE folks commissioned a study via IDC that they also published this week, just to kind of quantify the opportunity. 37% of North American businesses, IDC surveyed, are doing network as a service now. And another 32% plan to deploy network as a service within the next 12 months. So this is already a big market that's going to be kind of a giant market a year from now. And here's kind of an approachable way to do that with a very well-known vendor with a lot of name recognition.
Yeah, that number is a little surprising. I would have actually guessed it would already have been higher than that. Barb, does that number surprise you at all?
I'm always surprised when a new vendor that tries to enter in the channel to hit MSPs to do their sales for them. That always surprises me. So it'll be interesting to see what their marketing strategies are to get MSPs to start selling their services. Because I always wonder, can those vendors do it? Because you have other vendors that are in the channel that offer that, and they're channel only. So now you have HP, and they're not channel only. So how are they going to tap into the MSP market? Because that's essentially what they want. They want MSPs to start using, reselling their networking as a service so that they can grow their platform. So it'll be interesting to see how they dip their toe in the water in the channel, and what type of progress they're actually really going to make.
Yeah, does a program like this for network as a service through GreenLake, is that something that's attractive to you as a larger MSP, or do you have a different networking strategy?
I only started thinking about it when Rich started talking about it, and my mind just wandered off into the whole. I wonder if they're going to be at any channel events. I wonder what they're going to sell on stage. What are they going to try to do to make me? Because sometimes we sell against it. Or how are they going to make it an exclusive offer just for MSPs, so an MSP can grow and not worry that the customer is going to blindside the MSP and go to them direct. Like just little things. Those are the things that were running through my mind as Rich was like going down his list. HP is a great product. We're an HP shop, so I'm very familiar with all of their product lines. And as soon as that announcement came up, I was like, "Oh, this will be interesting." Like, like here's another one, because it's not like that any other. It's not, Dropbox tried it. Ignite, they tried it. Other vendors too have tried to have a channel product or a channel division to grow their servers offerings to the SMB market. And one of the ways to do that is to go through an MSP. So those were my thoughts.
And I mean, one of the, kind of complicating things to keep in mind, just in terms of some of the issues you were raising. So yeah, HPE is not a channel only vendor by any means. But the other thing about GreenLake is it comes with management, and HPE itself can do the management, or an MSP partner of theirs can. So, if you as an MSP decide that you are going to offer this to your customers, you can wrap that up. You can wrap your services up with the bundle that is available through HPE for Aruba and so on. But they also offer managed services to customers. So yeah, it can get a little complicated.
Mm-hmm.
2 layers of middle management in that case, Rich. That does sound very complicated.
Can I have some cheese with that?
So interesting stuff. Now, there was some more in this article that they're doing with GreenLake. There were some more announcements. Do you want to touch on any of those? Because when I think GreenLake, I always think of like their cloud compute platform, and I think about their backup and recovery services. Anything interesting there that you want to talk about?
There was so much stuff there. They have some new high performance computing options on GreenLake that involve new NVIDIA GPUs. They've updated their backup and recovery service. So now it'll support virtual machines on heterogeneous infrastructure. In particular, if you are a big VMware partner, you can now back up with this backup and recovery service. They also added to that backup and recovery service immutable data copies. So that's obviously a really smart protection against ransomware. They made some changes to the block storage product. So it was, they essentially, from what I could tell, saved up a bunch of stuff and made a big splash with it. And you can kind of read up on all of that in the article I wrote this week, which we'll link to from the show notes.
Yeah, awesome. There's also a new compute ops management tool that kind of sounded interesting. Lets data center operators perform firmware and software updates across all things through a single console. That sounds like something that would be useful, right, Barb?
I think so.
Sign her up, folks. She's on board. No, interesting stuff. There is a lot more in here as well. So yeah, just go and hit the article, and you can see all the links and read all the stuff, because there's a lot here to go through. But there's really not a lot of other news this week, is there, Rich? It's been kind of a slow week. But doesn't mean we don't have more to talk about. Right?
We've got all sorts of interesting stuff to talk about. Yeah, absolutely.
So why don't we move on from that and talk about everybody's favorite thing in the whole wide world, because everybody loves getting on the phone and calling people who weren't expecting your call, aka cold calling. It's my favorite thing in the world to do. Rich, I'm sure it's yours. Barb?
Well, hang on. I think you skipped over our vendor to watch.
Did we? No, that's according to my notes. It's after this.
Oh, okay. Well, then you're right. And you'll see why I was so anxious to get to I've been waiting weeks to talk about this vendor, but let's talk cold calling.
Well, we can back up, Rich, and we can do that. We have I can redo that whole intro because it was very sarcastic, and you just let me know.
Let's go. I can wait.
Barrel into cold calling. All right. So Rich, tell us why we're talking about cold calling.
You know why? Honestly, why we're talking about cold calling is because of a conversation that we had on this podcast some months back. I believe Ed Correa of CDN Technologies was our guest host that week. And there had been a story, like a very quick little story in our magazine about cold calling that we were talking about on that episode. And Ed said, man alive, if there's any topic, sales and marketing related topic that I wind up having conversations about with peers. It's cold calling. Everybody hates it, but we all know we need to do it, and everybody's asking for advice about it. And I came out of that podcast conversation and thought we need to go back to this again and dive into it a little bit more deeply, because I think I sort of underplayed how much this weighs on people's minds. And so our March issue included an article, Cold Calling 201, where we kind of talked about it a little bit more in depth. And I won't go point by point through the advice. There's a lot of great advice actually in this story. It really is worth kind of reading. And so we spoke to people like Gary Pica. We spoke to Keith Wubner, who's been on the podcast not that long ago. Gary said, don't follow a script. If you've got a script, it's going to sound like you've got a script, and that's not what you want to be doing. There was a lot of really good advice, I think, and this goes beyond cold calling. This is like just really good marketing advice that I think a lot of people don't appreciate, which is if you have it in your head that I want to come away from a call with a meeting, like one call, one meeting, and if I don't get a meeting, that call is a waste of time. That really isn't a good way to think about this activity. So you've got to book time for this. You got to do it on a regular basis, but you've got to go into it with the mindset that I am establishing a relationship with a potential customer. So the likelihood is you won't get a meeting. You certainly, you're probably not going to sell anything in that call, but that's okay. You're kind of getting your name and your identity out there with them. And, landing a new customer is typically a multi-touch kind of a process. It can unfold over months and so on. So don't expect short-term or demand short-term results on cold calling. And then, make sure that you're spending the time on the call, not selling. You're listening. You're trying to understand the customer and their needs. You're sharing information that they might find useful, so that you establish a sort of profile in their mind, are top of mind. And when that day comes, that ransomware knocks them out and their MSP doesn't know what to do about it, you're the first person they think to call because they've had those phone conversations with you. So good stuff. We'll link to this from the show notes, and you can read up on it. But I was glad that the timing worked out, that we were talking about this article on this episode, because Barb, this gets right to something that you are particularly good at and think a lot about, sales and marketing, that I think it's fair to say a lot of folks in the audience probably don't think enough about. So, just kind of, what's your thinking about cold calling generally?
I think that cold callers should get paid a lot of money, and they need to get properly trained, because lots of the cold calls that I received, I think, really, you actually think that I'm going to buy from you? Like, you want to get how much money? As I know how much the services cost, okay? You're sending someone who's making $15 an hour, and they want to have a half an hour of my time, and this is how they're talking? Click. That's what I think about cold callers. I think it is a very understated and underpaid profession. And I think that if you have a sales rep, then you need to decide what your marketing strategy is. Is it an inbound marketing strategy, or is it an outbound marketing strategy? And if you have a sales rep, your sales rep should be making the cold calls. It should be making cold calls to appointments that haven't converted, and it should be making phone calls to establish new relationships. I feel that they should be personable, they should be kind, and they should be polite. And what they should have scripted is what message that they're going to leave for the voicemail. Because when you do cold calling, you're going to get a lot of voicemail. You know what? So that's the part that you have to listen to what the other person wants, and you answer that, but let them know the reason why that you're calling. You also want to make sure that you're in the other person's phone system. Everybody has call display. You can see history. So you want to make sure that you're there. So when you are cold calling, stick to a regimented schedule. I had PAX, use PAX 8 as an example. Every Thursday, 2 o'clock, that PAX8 phone call gets in. I have it screened. So it's coming in. One Thursday, the PAX8 person didn't make their call. And I was just like, hey, what's going on here? The next Thursday, they made their call. I answered it. I said, you got her. Person didn't know what to say. And that's Rich. That's exactly what I just started laughing. I was just like, I knew they've been calling me. I knew that they've been calling me on the same day, roughly with the exact same time for months. Now they got me and they're just like, So that was what our call was about, me thanking them. And I let them know, it's like, we could try this again. Like, you know what? Like when you know what you're going to talk about, because they weren't expecting to reach anyone live. So I find that today, cold calling is lots of voicemail messages that's being left, but you also want to make sure that you have the company name and phone number appearing in the call display when you're making them. And I also think that they should be done by the designated salesperson in the office. It's a great way for them to get trained really fast on how to deal with objections, how to establish relationships. So that's my cold calling 2.01B.
You know what's so funny about that story is this person at PAX8 like stumbled on the genius technique to get through to you, right? Like call every week, skip a week, and then call, and you'll get. And they didn't anticipate that it would work that well. And I will say that story did resonate with me a little bit because if you're in my profession, PR people are trying to reach you on the phone pretty regularly, and they almost never do. And every now and again, I pick up the phone, and quite often it's like, because they just didn't actually expect to get through, and they don't know what to say. So I've been in that position before.
Matt, what's your take on it?
So, well, the article talks a little bit about like whether or not you should outsource cold calling, because a lot of companies do, because let's face it, a lot of companies really, really hate the whole cold calling process. And honestly, the person on the other end generally hates the cold calling process as well. But you gotta do what you gotta do. So the article talks about whether or not you should outsource it, and it's discouraged. What do you think, Barb? Is it, if it was don't do it at all or outsource it, which one would you recommend?
Don't do it all, or I'm thinking because I've had to make that decision. I don't know how to. I want to phone a friend.
Take your 50-50. Oh, it is a 50-50.
You know what? Is it a marketing strategy? Yes, it is. So it should be done. It's cheap. And it doesn't cost you anything. It gets your name out there. Like I said, the call display goes in someone's phone. So even if they choose not to answer and it goes into voicemail, people clear out their voicemail messages. You're going to be in the call display history. So if something happens, you are there. So yes, the calls should be made. Do a lot of people do them? No. Do a lot of people outsource them? Yeah, they do. Do I like the outsourcing part of it? I personally do not. And the reason why is when I've listened to those calls, they drive me absolutely bonkers. You hear them, they're coughing, they're chewing, and no one's going to buy with that. Like, you pick up the phone. Thank you for calling CDN Technologies. How can I help you? And you hear someone on the other end. Yeah, can I speak to Barb, please? I'm calling from blah, blah. Drives me absolutely bonkers. The only thing those calls are good for is for when I go back and check to make sure my phone is being answered the right way. That's an easy one to know if my person on my end is following the script, acknowledging the caller, saying hello, and saying yes, they'll help them no matter what the crazy issue is. Are they putting them on hold? Is my hold music going okay? Is that campaign going well? Little things like that. But otherwise, I think that people outsource cold calling, and the cold callers, realistically, it's not the highest paid job in the world. It's not the most secure job in the world. It has a high turnover rate. So it doesn't, and if no one really wants to be a telemarketer for life, some people do. I believe Carrie Simpson made a career out of it. But essentially, you have to have the ability to follow through, to be polite and well-mannered. So that's where I'm at with cold calling. It's a long-winded answer. I have such mixed emotions about it because I'm receiving them. Remember, I was hiring an admin, so when the phone rings, no one here has voicemail that's got to get answered. So yeah, I pick up the phone, and I get all vendors, financial planners, banks, other phone companies, other MSPs, I'm just like, oh my goodness. So you kind of learn what you don't like in a cold caller. So then if I ever heard any of my people doing that, I'm just kind of like, oh my God, no. So does it have to be scripted? A little bit. Yes, you do have to have the objective. You do have to be personable. But if you are paying attention to that campaign, you'll notice there is a lot of voicemail being left. You can do a lot of dials during the day. There's a lot of voicemail being left. If you do not have a big list and you have a salesperson, there's no reason why your salesperson can't be a telemarketer too, because they're going to have to know how to talk to people, and telemarketing is a great way to practice their communication and their manners. There you go. Sorry, I am passionate about this topic.
You are far more than I expected. It's funny that you mentioned, because you say you have everybody has a kind of a love-hate relationship with cold callers, because everybody doesn't like getting cold calls. But then someday you might realize that you're in the position where the tables are turned, and you, in order to grow your business, now you have to be the thing that you despise. And that's got to be very, very hard to quantify in your own head. You know what I mean?
I don't mind doing cold calls. I did cold calls for a long time when I was growing CDN Technologies. And I feel that is what gave me a better business acumen. It gave me better communication skills. It also gave me good skills to establish my boundaries when communicating with other people. So I think it is something that should be done by the salesperson, if you have a salesperson.
And so I'll ask you one last question on the topic, just to kind of see what you say. If you could give 3, not 101 tips, but 201 tips, advanced things that has worked for you or for your salespeople to make cold calling more effective, what would those 1, 2, or 3 things be?
Repeat. So the same, just keep doing. Like I said, the PAX 8 person, they called. When those calls come in from vendors, and I have a person answering the phone here, for me, it's a safety blanket. It's like, oh, okay, you know what? They're practicing answering the phone. It's a new place of work for them. It's great. If you screw up with someone that's making you a cold call. So I like them for that respect, because it helps me better my team. And I also like it because it's for when you're making the calls, you have to, every marketing campaign, because that's what telemarketing is. It's a marketing campaign. You have to repeat it. You have to repeat it over and over and over again. And it's layered, right? Because you're on the call display. You're in their voicemail. They're going to hear you, even if it's just to hear delete. People don't delete their call logs or anything. They might block you, but they don't delete their call logs. So in the event they're looking for someone, then they need to scroll through. They can find you, and you're already there. So just repeat it.
And put your face on a billboard. That is also helpful.
That one wasn't the greatest marketing.
Billboards and cold calling, folks. That's the wave of the marketing future. No, interesting stuff. And there's a lot in this article to digest because there's many pages of it. Really good sound advice. I encourage you to go and find the show notes for the episode and go and read that, and you'll get a lot out of that, I'm sure. There's a vendor that Rich really wants to talk about in Vendor to Watch because he's so excited about it. I think we're just going to skip that segment for this week and move right. No, I'm kidding, Rich. It is an interesting vendor. What is the vendor that you are just chomping at the bit to talk about?
So this is a company called SkyAMP, and I had not heard of them. You know, by the holiday season, I think I first spoke to the folks at SkyAMP in January. And no kidding, I have been waiting for the day to talk about them on the podcast ever since. And I honestly don't know how much we're going to have to say about them because they're, you know, the thing that makes them unique is such a secret that we can't really explain it. But it's just very interesting to me. So SkyAMP, what does SkyAMP do? I will describe the basic use case to you, and it's not going to amaze or astound you very much. What they do, they make a product, and it's pretty small. It looks to be about the size of a brick, and it amplifies wireless signals, meaning Wi-Fi, Bluetooth, or cell phone, 4G LTE signals. And so it increases the range and it increases the strength of those signals. And we could all imagine situations in which that would be very useful. Here's the thing about the SkyAMP product that is kind of odd. It is an unpowered solution, by which I mean you don't plug it into the wall. It doesn't have a battery. It doesn't have solar panels. There is no electricity involved in this product. You take it out of the box. There must be some kind of configuration. I've never played around with it, so I don't know how that works. But you literally just put it on a shelf somewhere, and it does what it's going to do for you like magic. Now, it's a patented technology. I interviewed the president of the company, Jason Howell, and I was like, okay, so how does this work? And it's like, well, I could tell you, but then I'd have to kill you. It's one of those. So he can't tell me. This is as much as I got out of him. I quote him at a couple of points in this little article I wrote. He said, quote, "It combines physics with a proprietary blend of materials." And I'll come back to that in a moment. And then at another point in the conversation, he said, basically, we're kind of cannibalizing, for lack of a better term, multiple radio waves that are on the same band or frequency. None of that helps. I don't know how this thing works. What I do know is they tell you this will work great unless you place it on a metal shelf. So you can put it anywhere, but just don't put it on a metal shelf. So, okay, magnetism is involved in some way. There is an entry-level model. It sells for $449. It works only on the cell phone signals. For $649, you can step up to the one that also does Wi-Fi and Bluetooth. Both of those devices have a 600-foot range. And then the top of the line right now model, which sells for $1,495, has a 1,000-foot range. Guys, they are working now. By the end of this year, they think they will have some more units out there. They're going to have one that you can wear, a wearable unit. They're going to add 5G support, and they're going to roll out another unit with a 3-mile range. None of this makes any sense to me, Matt. It's a fascinating product.
This is like Star Trek crossing billions together.
Part of me also feels like we're going to see this on an infomercial someday, like Ron Popeil's new galactic Wi-Fi enhanced. Okay, I'm a fairly technical guy, and I know a lot about, I'm not an RF frequency expert, right? But this sounds kind of weird. Barb, does this sound weird to you?
Yes, and what I can share with you from what I've seen is that when you use the line, if I tell you I'll have to kill you, if you use that in the channel type of thing, you're never going to sell. So that part's always a little bit weird because everything is always about keeping things open. Cannibalism things, are they eating dust? I'm trying to think what they're eating. The metal thing, that would be interesting because let's just talk about the Wi-Fi signal. You have a warehouse, lots of warehouses, they have crappy Wi-Fi, okay? So you need to get a booster in there. You need to get a solid Wi-Fi signal in there. You can't use a small ubiquity type of device. You need something a little bit bigger and stronger. But a warehouse has a lot of metal metal shelving and things like that. So would you be able to use this for an industrial level? Because you can't put it on a metal shelf, but what happens if your building is metal structured? Like we have, what are they called? Row bars and everything, like in concrete. So does that interfere with things? Is it just like out in the open when you're in the forest? Like, if a tree falls in the forest and no one hears it, does it make a sound type of thing? I don't know. My mind is wandering just like yours is, Matt. Like it's weird.
Yeah, I wonder if I'm thinking about it the wrong way. Maybe maybe it absorbs other RF spectrums outside of these, so that way there's less noise in an environment, and that somehow makes signals more cleaner. Or the word amplify is kind of a weird term to use, but maybe that's what it's doing.
Oh, blocking out other stuff. So what passes through like an insulator, so to say?
Yeah, but it's like you put it up somewhere and it supposedly makes it like an arrangement. I wonder if it's like absorbing other RF. I'm spitballing ideas to try to figure out how it works, but I have to imagine that some people have tried it and have had success with it. Like I don't see any like testing data on their website because I'm kind of like looking at it right now, but it's a black block. Rich, that's what it is.
Let's put them in a room with a whole bunch of engineers and see what happens. It could be like the battle royale, technology versus techs.
I have to imagine somebody's cut one of these things open and looked on the inside. So interesting. So, Rich, thanks for bringing it on to talk about it. It sounds like a dream come true, and usually dream come trues are just that, dreams.
Rich, because you love them so much, we are here to support you in all of your future endeavors.
I haven't been able to sleep for months thinking about this. So yeah, I appreciate it.
And ladies and gentlemen, if you do cough up the $1,500 for the Pro model, which is a black, it doesn't kind of show how big it is. Actually, it probably does in the specs. It is 20 by 10 by 12. If you cough up the $1,500 for that black block, they will give you free shipping.
So
So
if you needed further incentive, yeah.
The
operators are standing by.
Yeah, the value speaks for itself. Interesting stuff. All right, I'm going to have to read up more about this product and maybe see if I can get my hands on one to test out and see if it works. So with that, Barb, anything else to say about SkyAMP? How many you want?
Oh, I think we should all have one each. We should all do it together. Have a whole SkyAMP party.
I agree. We're kind of laughing a little bit because it seems kind of silly, but hey, if this thing actually works, like it will, then people will know, and they'll be laughing at us because they will be the ones rolling in cash, because that would mean that this is amazing. So,
do you think that video will go viral?
maybe. So, yeah, good luck with them. I hope it takes off. I hope they make lots of money. With that, we are going to take a break. And when we come back, we have got an awesome interview lined up with Reed Warren. He's the CEO of IT Valuations. We're going to do a little M&A discussion. I bet it's going to be awesome. You are not going to want to miss it. We will be right back. Supply chain delays. They're impacting the world in virtually every industry, and IT is no exception. Vital components, switches, and other accessories and hardware are being put on backorder, and revenue is trickling in. So how can partners help SMBs to bridge the technology gap and keep their networks running and secure? Leading Fortinet distributor Exclusive Networks has the answer. It's by leveraging Fortinet's best-in-breed cloud virtualization solution, FortiGate. FortiGate's next-generation firewalls deliver industry-leading enterprise security for any edge at any scale with full visibility and threat protection. Exclusive Networks is a value-added distributor who can provide in-depth brand-specific knowledge to their partners, design and create suitable end-user solutions, and help them deploy FortiGate and other Fortinet technologies that can help them grow no matter what's going on in the market. Don't let the supply chain disruption interfere with your organization any longer. Contact Exclusive Networks today. Learn more at pages.info.exclusive-networks.com/trust. Again, pages.info.exclusive-networks.com/trust. And thank you to Exclusive Networks for sponsoring the ChannelPro Weekly podcast. And welcome back to part 2 of ChannelPro Weekly, mergers and acquisitions. It's been a hot topic for the past 24 months, in our industry in particular, as market pressures and the coronavirus pandemic pushed many to look for an exit strategy early. Or maybe you're looking to grow quickly. Well, how do you start? What do you need to know? Here to discuss that is Reed Warren, the CEO of IT Valuations. Hello, Reed.
Hey, thanks, Matt. Great to be on with you.
It is awesome to have you. I should say that because we've had you on before, I believe, in the past, but we've also had you very, very recently because you've been a part of our ChannelPro SMB forum event. Rich, why don't you tell us a little bit about that?
Yeah. So we just did our first SMB forum event of the year. We're going to do 6 this year. And 2 weeks ago, as we record this, we did one in Newark, New Jersey. And Reed participated in a panel. We had a session that we called MSP Survivor, modeled after a certain television show, maybe, if their attorneys are listening. And so it was kind of a competition. It was Reed and 2 other MSP merger and acquisition experts answering questions, and then the audience got to pick a winner. And needless to say, the one of the 3 panelists, the one we wanted on the podcast, was the champion.
Yes, it was a reverse situation though, because it was how to get off the island, not how to stay on the island. So I got voted off.
Right, you got to live. See, the other 2 are still actually there in Newark, stuck on that stage platform, fighting for whatever scraps were left over from lunch. So good for you that you were able to escape. So Reed, it's great to have you back on. Why don't you go ahead and tell us a little bit more about you and what you do at IT Valuations?
Yeah, thank you so much. IT Valuations, been in business 4 years. We've really the last 15 years of my life has been focused on valuations, mergers, and acquisitions of IT services firms. And IT Valuations does that. So a third of our work is specifically valuations and consulting around valuations. About a third of our work is true merger work, where we'll be doing valuing 2-3 different firms, then facilitating the merging process. And then about a third of our work is transaction work, both buy side and sell side representation. But all of our work is for IT services firms in North America. We have probably about 20% of our clients are actually in Canada, as well as scattered across the United States. So our typical clients are going to range anywhere from about 2 million to about 50 million in revenue.
Wow, fantastic. So I think I'll kick off the discussion by starting with a kind of a simple question for you. And it's not what is mergers and acquisitions, like everybody knows what that means. But what would you say the landscape is like or has been like over the past 24 months? We know it's been hot, but how hot has it been?
Yeah, it's really been kind of an interesting thing. And by the way, my kids give me a hard time about M&A and say that really stands for murders and assassinations. And, no, and also sometimes it gets pretty intense. But
what you do in your spare time, Reed, is really up to you.
No, in all seriousness, it certainly, coming through COVID, obviously put a big hold on a lot of stuff that was going on. And then really we saw it at the end of 2020, lots of activity there. And it was just kind of a good shakeup, I think, to the market. The companies that really did have good operational maturity actually did really well through COVID and really grew. If you didn't have really good operational maturity, you tend to really struggle through it. But IT services as a whole, and particularly the MSP market, did really well. And so coming into 2021, private equity, because of the disruptor in the public space as far as the stock markets, and we see it again actually happening today, because of the volatility that happened there, a lot of money moved into the private markets. We saw private equity just really take a really aggressive stance and looking to buy pretty much anything over about $1 million in EBITDA. And so we saw one of the highest volume of transactions in that MSP space occurring in 2021. One of the things that happened though in 2021 as well, which was interesting, is the strategic market. So strategic buyers buying that out. really kind of slowed up because there was such a shortage of sellers. It was definitely a seller's market. But what we found in 2021, and it's really changed coming into 2022, is 2021, because of the everybody's kind of performance dipped in 2020 as a result of COVID. A lot of sellers were reluctant to sell in 2021 because their numbers didn't look that good. Coming into 2022 with a strong year behind us, most MSPs and just the rising tide of the MSP market. MSP market grew about 10.8% in 2020. People are coming, in 2021. And so we're seeing coming into 2022, a lot of MSPs coming back onto the market to sell their firm because, hey, we've had some really good year financially in 2021. We're looking on the upward trend. And so again, we're seeing a really strong velocity as far as numbers of transactions. We are seeing the threats to rate increases starting to taper off. The strategic market, but private equity continues to be strong. And we're seeing a massive amount of both mergers to get to critical mass to be attractive to private equity. We see private equity starting to get pretty creative to do transactions and starting to do, hey, we'll buy 3 of you at once. In fact, I was on a call yesterday with a guy in New York. We have an MSP that's actually, or a private equity that's actually looking at buying 10 companies all at once under simultaneous sign and close, really starting to get pretty complicated. But it's really fascinating to see the velocity and the transaction multiples continue to rise in spite of an increasing inflation.
You know, I was talking at that Newark show with Abe Garver, who was one of the other panelists in that session you were in. And he told me at one point he's aware of multiple private equity funds in the range of 300 to 500 million each. That money is just out there to buy MSPs, and their big problem is finding good companies that are willing to sell. So, I mean, this is an incredible seller's market right now if you are an MSP. And so, you know, my first question, and this is a question that actually came up during that session, white hot market right now, how long does it remain white hot? So, you know, for the people in the audience right now who are kind of trying to decide, do I take advantage of this right now? How long do I have to wait before it starts to dissipate? What's the kind of medium longer term timing situation look like to you?
Yeah, so I think the market, I think a couple of things are going to happen in the marketplace. I think for strategic buyers, and strategic buyers are usually, as a general rule, buying companies under $1 million in EBITDA. So that's a 5-6 million in revenue, buying a 2-3 million in revenue type firm, and they're going to do it through debt financing to accomplish that transaction. So they don't have an investor behind them. They're leveraging the assets of the business and their debt position to be able to do acquisitions. I think that market's going to certainly going to cap off, and it's very, very much tied to interest rates because I can't borrow as much, and what I'm borrowing is going to cost me more. And so we're going to see negative pressure on transaction values and a cooling in that segment of the marketplace. Certainly on the private equity, though, I really don't have anything on the horizon that's going to say, hey, this is going to bump it up. I think in the end, what's going to change that is if the public markets start to stabilize and get back into a steady growth mode like they were before, but we just had so much kind of political and global unrest that is really creating a lot of volatility in the public market space. And as a result, the private space is becoming increasingly more attractive. And we're just seeing that infusion of cash into that market to do acquisitions. And so I would say, but coming back to should I sell? I mean, that's a really different question. Yes, I mean, it's a great time to sell, but it's kind of like the housing market. If I sell, what am I going to go buy, right? And so I'm going to come back to my admonition, which has just been consistent across really the whole life, is you're only going to sell your business once. And so it really is about having a good exit strategy, knowing what is the number I've got to get for my business. And candidly, with all the risk in the marketplace, I would say sell as soon as you get there. So if your magic number is, hey, I've got to walk away with $5 million as an example, or 2 million, pick your number, you want to sell as soon as you can achieve that. And we just look at the risks in cybersecurity. We look at the risk from running the business on a day-to-day perspective. My feeling is, sell when you get there. Today, if the numbers align and you can get to a transaction that's going to get you to your exit, then do it today. But just because the market's hot, it's not a good enough reason for you to sell your business, because if it doesn't get you to your exit numbers, Now you got to go kind of start all over or do something else, and there's going to be non-competes and a lot of other issues. So it's going to come back to really knowing what that is and knowing, and I'm going to say exit number, it's not a finish line, it's a transition line into something next. So you have to have that well thought out before you go to sell your business.
What are buyers looking for when they buy? Like, what should sellers know before they sell?
Yeah, really good question, Barb. I think in the end, buyers are looking for a stable platform, right? And that doesn't mean always, that means just steady growth, steady profitability, right? And so when you look at doing that, the more volatile the business is, then the greater the downward pressure on the transaction value. But when you look at it, for most MSPs, having a good operational maturity, good bottom line profitability as a part of it, and steady growth. So the number one thing that's going to impact the transaction value is your bottom line profitability. Simplest put. Second to that is going to be your top line growth. So it's pretty easy. In fact, I would say top line growth affects the multiples probably faster than just about anything else. It can take, most companies or buyers, private equity can buy a profitable firm, but if I can buy a growing firm, it's easier to transform the profitability of the business and to transform the growth of the business. So if you have a company that's growing twice the market rate, growing 20 to 25% top line year over year, hey, it may not be the most profitable thing, but candidly, as a buyer, I'll buy that because I can bolt that growth engine onto a profitable firm. And now I've got the best of both high profit and high growth.
So the people that are buying in these private equity firms, do they just have a lot of money and they don't know what to do with it? Or do they actually have a technical background so they understand what it is that they're buying when they buy an MSP?
Yeah, super good question. No, for most of them, and particularly in the private equity space, it's a it's a flipping strategy, right? So if I buy, let's just for simplicity's sake, just say, hey, if I buy five firms that are $1 million in EBITDA, right? So $1 million in EBITDA firm today is going to be trading, selling for probably right around between 5.5 and 6.5 times EBITDA, right? So let's just call it $6 million for a transaction value. The reality is if you're 5 million in EBITDA, you're going to get a 10 to 12x multiple. So private equity is simply looking at this and saying, hey, if I buy 5 of you guys at $1 million and I pay a 6x multiple and I bolt you guys together with some consolidation and I get you to 5 to 6 million in EBITDA as a result within a year, I can take that same asset that's now 6 million in EBITDA and I can sell it for 11, 12x multiple. And so that's how I'm making my money as a private equity firm and getting, most private equity is looking for a 5 times return on that invested capital or even 7 times return on invested capital. So again, a lot of private equities a lot of money's coming into that saying, hey, I give this private equity firm $1 million to work with, I can basically 5 times my money in 3 to 5 years. That's a great return on investment and candidly, a higher probability of success than the public markets.
When MSPs are dialed in and they have operational maturity, they are cash cows. Like let's be real here.
Yeah, they are.
So, but lots of MSPs, they're just tech turn owner operators. They're still they're small. Their top line revenues might not be very vain, but their profitability and their cash flow, there is a sustainable income there in the future. So what would you say for those MSPs that are smaller, because a lot of them, they don't hit $1 million a year. Like they're never going to hit that, but they got these cute little machines and now they're retiring, right, or they don't do it anymore, or, that they had for health issues, I'm thinking stroke, aneurysm, right, hit by a bus. Like, what would you say to the wife? What would you say to his family? What would you say to the small guy that has been hanging his own shingle for a while about selling?
Yeah, no, it's really good, and it's a tough spot. So if you look at those firms that are particularly under 500,000 in EBITDA, you're probably looking at a 4 to maybe 5.5x multiple at the high end. And so for a lot of them, that's not enough to walk away. They are in a tough spot. And that's really where we see so much of the merger activity happening, is because a lot of companies are saying, hey, I'm 200,000-300,000 in EBITDA. and I'm not going to get an optimal multiple, but hey, I've got 3 or 4, kind of peers. We're in the same market. And if we came together, now we become a $1.2 million in EBITDA, and I can transform my multiples as part of just merging together as a merging companies. But it is a difficult space in the sense that oftentimes in those situations, it's worth more to you just to continue it and eventually sunset the business than to try to sell it, because the multiples just aren't there to be able to sell it. Now, there is a pretty good strategy around acquisitions in that space, but because of the typically the lack of fiscal maturity in that sub 1 million or sub 1.5 million in revenue firm, it becomes a really hard thing to do an aggressive roll-up strategy in that space, because just simply for the level of effort required to get a transaction done, it's easier to buy something that's going to be, 10 times, that EBITDA size, and it's a whole lot less hassle to get done. So I do know a number of buyers that are doing roll-up strategies in that space, but it's typically not going to be private equity led as a result of that.
So let's broaden out from there a little bit. So you talked about, merging with other MSPs, acquiring other MSPs. One of the things that is always on my mind when this topic comes up, and I'll cite the example you just raised before, like somewhere out there in the world right now is a private equity firm that is hoping to combine 10 MSPs in an afternoon, right? So there's going to be this giant MSP out there competing with the smaller companies that Barb was talking about. So let's say you're not looking to sell in the next 12 months, 24 months, and you're looking to remain in business. I mean, what are the options? What are the considerations and concerns and the options for remaining competitive in a market that's going to have these Goliaths in it increasingly?
Yeah, and just going to say continue to scale and grow your business. I think the days of having a true lifestyle business are fading. I think you really it's becoming more and more of an environment that you got to go big or you kind of have to go home. And that's just the unfortunate reality of where the market is. The market is just becoming less and less, I don't know, I'm going to say tolerant, but I don't mean like the market's getting nasty. You don't have the place where you can really continue to operate in a high cash flow, low risk environment. The security issues are becoming bigger and bigger, and you have to have a security strategy. And candidly, if you don't, and that was one of the things that really came out of that Newark conversation, was all the risks that associated with cybersecurity. And so for a lot of the smaller firms, you're just not in a place where you can have a good comprehensive cybersecurity policy or strategy. And as a result, you got to weigh the risk of, do I continue to operate and hope something doesn't happen? Or do I really need to try to find a way to grow aggressively? And that's going to be taking business risks to be able to do that. And so I think we're going to see, when you look at the market overall, I think it's like 84% of MSPs are actually under that 2 million in revenue number, or less than 10 employees. I think is probably a better way to define it. And as a result, I think those firms in that space have to make, as an owner, you got to make a decision. Do I run the risk, or do I start to reinvest significantly into growth and to change my environment rather than just kind of riding along and having a comfortable lifestyle? And so I think the lifestyle business is going to be in decline, just because the market isn't going to allow for you to run those risks and just stay comfortable. I think you got to be able to change it up and really start to grow in size and grow in maturity, or you're going to find yourself fading pretty quickly.
It's almost like it's something you have to do, though, because I mean, if you just look at regulatory compliance, that's going to make operating a very small business incredibly more difficult as the MSP and IT market matures, right?
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
I just got that song, Should I Stay or Should I Go?
That's right.
Should I stay or should I grow? That's all I'm hearing. I remember when I first started my MSP and going through the process of growing it. I'm very thankful for everybody who sold their MSP prior to me, because when I first started out, I didn't know how to put an MSP together. And essentially everywhere I went, there was always a roadblock. Like, how do I do this? How do I grow operation? How do I grow sales? How do I grow marketing? How do I hire people? How do I do this? How do I structure an organization? How do I grow to be, the gorilla in the room, so to say? So it was these MSPs that were IT companies that were selling, they were calling it quits. And essentially all you had to do was find that list, sign that NDA and say, oh, so this is how you do it. It's kind of like when you want to design your house, or you're buying a house and then you see these multi-million-dollar homes that are for sale and how they're beautifully decorated. And you think, yeah, I want to have that, and that, and that. So it's a great opportunity with all of these mergers and acquisitions that are happening for smaller MSPs to grow, because the world is changing. People are getting packaged out. Yes, they're looking for work too, but essentially what I've seen is that there are a lot of new MSPs coming to the market. They're small now, but they're growing fast. They're growing fast, really quick. And then I see older MSPs that are operationally mature, but they have lower profits. The cash flow isn't there. They've been doing it for like 25 years, 30 years. And, they're still like a boutique-like shop. And now they want to call it quits, and they just hope that they can sell and it's not a fire sale, or they can be merged into another company and then perhaps stick around for like 6 months. And maybe if they're lucky, a vendor will hire them, so to say.
Well, the market, one of the beautiful things if you're in that smaller space is there's such a high demand for talent, right? And so the opportunity, I think, that a lot of smaller firms are finding, and quite candidly, I think the opportunity, if any of the audience is listening to that, is, hey, you need good project managers, you need good technical leaders today. And so there is this opportunity to be able to sell the business into a larger firm and be a part of the growth of that firm. So you're able to take, harvest what you've built, you're able to take risk off the table, and you're able to be in a place where, because of market demand, you're going to still have a high in-demand skill set, and you're just going to do it just differently rather than running your own show. You're going to be a part of something else. And there's a lot of great companies that are out there that, we look at what makes a successful transaction. It's first cultural fit, then strategic fit, and then financial fit, kind of in that order. But there's a lot of places where I think you can find a great home. You can find a great home for your team and for your customers. You're able to actually expand on the services that you're selling your customers because you're now part of something larger. And in the end, it's not like it's over. It's a different chapter. It's a little bit different structure, but in the end, you still have a way to be able to significantly contribute into the lives of the team that you've built and into the lives of your customers.
So if I'm ready to sell and I have reason to believe I'll get a good valuation, for my business, I have a couple of different options that we've kind of touched on. And one is selling to private equity. Another is selling to a fellow MSP. What kind of advice do you give folks in terms of thinking through those alternatives, pros and cons either way?
I'd say call 651-235-3019 is what I would say. No, or IT Valuations. But in all seriousness, it really is going to be, it's important if you're thinking about selling to choose your buyer, right? You have the opportunity to do that, and the buyers are going to provide different paths. So if I can lay that out maybe a little better, if you're over $1 million in EBITDA, you're going to be in a place where you're going to be attracted to private equity, and you'll really have the choice between a strategic buyer and a private equity buyer. A strategic buyer is going to be, as a general rule, is going to be much more concerned about cultural. You're going to be fitting in. How does the teams mesh? And it's going to be far more of I'm going to call it a family kind of feel to it, because in the end, how the strategic buyer is going to get their money back is out of this converged entity and what that looks like. And so making sure that there's a good company, employee integration, good customer integration, good technology integration becomes really paramount for the strategic buyer, that there's this really, really a strong win-win type scenario. Now, it's not that private equity doesn't want a win-win, but in the end, what you learn about private equity, what they do better than anybody else is they know how to make money. And so in the end, if it comes down to, hey, keeping your culture or making money, they're going to make money. If it's going to come down to keeping your customers are making money, they're going to make money, right? And so in the end, it's not that I don't want to make them sound like cold-hearted, guys. It's just the fact that they are there to transform the value of the business such that they can get their return on flipping it. And so what I found that most companies that sell into private equity, pretty consistent, there's some exceptions to it, but for the most part, they say, hey, I made my money. It was a really good transaction from that perspective. But man, within about a year after selling the firm, the culture was different. It was much more performance related. Some of the people I liked that were good friends aren't there anymore. They let some of the customers go that we had a long time because they weren't really profitable. And in the end, that's how private equity actually works. And so, as you look at it and as you grow in size, you have the options of going, well, what do I really want, right? If I really want to maintain a longer legacy or have this kind of a platform on which a buyer could build upon, your strategic buyers are going to probably be a friendlier buyer from that perspective. Private equity, it's not that they're not friendly and nice, but in the end, they're going to be a little bit cooler. They're going to be about driving the profits and the growth out of the business and really dialing that up such that you have an optimal performance.
I don't think that private equity is interested in a lot of the smaller MSPs, because what are the stats? About 75% of MSPs never hit $1 million. So they're under the $1 million mark for their top line revenues. They're tech owner operators. They're really great tech people, but they're not good business people. So they don't have that operation. They don't have the sales. They don't have marketing. Everything is by referral, and my business grew, so on and so forth. So you have this group of people that's a little bit lost. So those people just call 905-542-9759.
All right. Well, don't forget about the third option. You can always sell to the mafia.
Yeah.
I don't know what their vision for your business will be, though, but that would be interesting to find out.
No, but they make you an offer you can't refuse.
It's a real family business.
Yeah. But essentially, I think that's a good group that needs to be acknowledged, and having them come together and become a super MSP. Everyone has an opinion. You know what? Are you Sophos? Are you Fortinet? Are you WatchGuard? Are you Cisco? You know what? Then you have to. I don't think that private equity is really interested into settling those arguments. Like you said, they're really good at making money. So when you are a larger MST, when you've gone over that $1 million hump, that first $1 million, that hump, it always seems like it's never going to come. And then afterwards you realize that was the easiest million you ever made. So to say, so when you go over that hump and then you hit what do they call it? The valley of death, that $3.5 million. When you're stuck there, it's just should I stay or should I grow? You begin to have one of those. Then you begin to look at private equity. Am I going to get it? Am I not? Is anybody going to be interested in me? And then if you make it over the hump, then essentially now you're flipping everything in your favor. Now you can play the game, so to say, because you can hold your own. There's nothing that private equity is going to do for you except write you a big check, because you know what, you've earned your stripes, so to say. If I'm understanding everything correctly, that's kind of how it lay of the land in the MSP.
Well, I would agree, and I think when you look at the sub $1 million market in revenue. I do think it is, you're gonna sell, or you're gonna merge with people and people you like and people you trust. It's very much a personal, it's a relational business, and quite candidly, that's how you have, if you're running a business that size, that's your relationship with your employees, that's who you've hired, that's who your customers are. And so, we're certainly seeing, within peer groups, these relationships build, and it's well, hey, we're kind of essentially the same. We have some different structures and some different pieces, but we become really good candidates just to merge together and de-risk some of our business issues by becoming a larger entity. I think the only thing that I would, and I'm not here to disagree or create contention here, but I think the difference is that we see in the private equity space, and we have, for example, we have a client in Dallas, Texas that's going through it. They were looking to continue to scale and grow. And it's like, hey, we're growing well, we're profitable. I'm going through these things, and I'm going to go from a 6x multiple to a 7x multiple in a year, and possibly to an 8x multiple in a year. And so we got things, dialed in. We don't have to sell. But now when I look at what private equity is able to do with my business, and like in their situation, they're going to look at, selling, and they're going to get 70, 80%, cash at close, and 20% or a quarter of it, let's call it a quarter, is going to be in rollover equity. Well, when I start looking at a 5x return on that rollover equity, that's more than what I was paid for in cash at the beginning. And I can't actually I can't grow my business as fast as that 5x is going to grow. And so because it does becomes compelling. So let's just, talk about a hypothetical situation. If you have a situation where, let's say your value of your business is $6 million, right? And I'm going to take $4 million in cash and $2 million in rollover equity as a private equity firm, because I got $1 million in EBITDA. Let's just say it was a 6x multiple. Now what happens is that $2 million that I rolled into the private equity company is going to get somewhere between a 3 and 5 times return. That means within 3 to 5 years, now that $2 million is going to be worth somewhere between 6 and 10 million in 3 to 5 years. I can't actually transform the value of my business as fast as that's going to make money if I'm a private equity space. And so that's one of the big draws to being a part of the private equity, is I'm able to take the risks off the table today and still be able to harvest a pretty material upside by being a contributor to the larger organization. And so again, we just
buy a boat. Remember, you buy the boat.
Yeah. So, but that's really, but coming back to it, when we talk about, and this is, so when we talk to potential sellers, right? If you can get to your exit number through an organic growth strategy, you should do that. That's the least riskiest approach. From there, depending on your time horizon, you could do acquisitions, right? So if I've got a 10-year view, hey, right now, I should be looking at buying other companies or rolling other companies into, into the business to scale and get to the growth. But if I'm at a place where my time horizon doesn't get me to my exit number through organic growth, and I don't have my time horizon to get me there through acquisitive growth, through acquiring companies, now I'm really at a place that says, for me to get to my exit, I've got to do something, right? I've either got to I got to either start to do a merger strategy to transform my multiple in the end. And that's why we're seeing a lot of activity happening with that. But ideally, I've got to do that and then have some sort of exit of that merged entity to actually get to my exit number. And so in the end, it really comes back to, first of all, and this is, I think, one of the bigger challenges for that sub $1 million space, is that most of them haven't spent a lot of time figuring out how I'm going to exit and what I'm going to do with it. And as a result, they're getting within 3 years of that exit, and there just isn't a lot of options by that point. And so one of the things, and I'm happy to say it here, for most companies looking to sell, it's a 5-year journey to actually get ready to be positioned to sell, to optimize the business for value, and also be able to achieve that. It's just like any financial planning, that says a lot of that stuff, the roots of your retirement start 20 years in advance of you getting to retirement. Otherwise, it's kind of too late. And I think if you're in that sub $1 million spot listening today, you need to be thinking about that well in advance, because it is about, how do I transform the value and how do I get to a good retirement? Not just how do I have, a payday today. It has to have a longer, bigger term strategy.
Yeah, retirement's expensive.
Well, yeah.
So last question, maybe kind of following up on that a little bit. So, so it's a 5-year journey. The journey of 1,000 miles begins with a single step. So let's leave people with like their marching orders here. For both the person who is thinking, I'm going to sell relatively soon based on this conversation, and for the person who's thinking, I'm going to wait a little while before I exit. What's the one thing you want each of those people to do tomorrow, basically, to kind of get this whole process started?
Yeah, I would say it first of all starts with your exit plan. And I don't want to sound like a financial planner here, because I'm not that, but it really does. It says, what is it that I need, for me to be able to exit, to move into retirement, however far that away that is. And so you really need to kind of look at that and then, back your way into it. So let's start step one. Step one is take your annual salary or your lifestyle salary that you want to live on, and you multiply that by 20. So if you're at 200,000 annualized income today, I'll multiply that by 20. That's $4 million. Okay, so I need $4 million after taxes for me to sustain my present day lifestyle. So now I got to look at it and say, well, if I'm going to sell my business, then I probably need to sell my business for somewhere between 7 and 8 million, so that by the time I pay taxes and everything, I've got 4 million after taxes. Okay, so now I need to have a business that's worth $8 million before I can get to my exit strategy. Well, where am I at today? And so just kind of really backing into that, and then saying, hey, what do I have to do? So if I'm 10 years out and I'm a $3 million revenue MSP, well, there's some chance with some good marketing and good strategy and organic growth, I can actually get to that $8 million valuation in 10 years. And so let's put together marketing, let's put together strategies like that. Maybe take a look at acquiring a close friend of the firm kind of a thing to help accelerate to that growth. So that would be kind of the first, kind of options that you would look at. If you're going, man, it's 5 years out and I'm 3 million and I got to get to an $8 million value, I got to change up the plan. So not only do I need to drive up maybe the profitability of my firm and not only drive up the growth of my firm, but I really need to look at merging with a couple other people possibly to be able to get to that number. But in the end, all the strategies come back to what is the value of the business that I have to have when I exit. So I would just start with that. Figure out what your lifestyle is that you need to have, multiply it by 20. That's your after-tax number. Basically double it, because that's going to be depending on whether you live in Canada, or the US, or New York, or California, or Texas, all different tax brackets, but you have to look at that, right? And apply the appropriate tax bracket. And then now that's the number you're working towards as a business to get the most out of your business.
Well, and on that note, if I'm doing the math in my head, thinking times 20, I think my post-retirement lifestyle is living in a van down by the river.
That's true.
Holy moly, those are big numbers. And Barb, I will go back to one thing you said too. If there is that person out there that exists that has way more money and they don't know what to do with it, I've got lots of ideas. Come to me, and I will provide my Bitcoin wallet address for you. No so with that.
But to that point, I would just say, yeah, if you're in Canada and you're sub, 1 million, hey, call CDN. Give Barb a call, and because that becomes a path for you and a path for her, right? And for 1 + 1 = something better.
Oh, thank you for that, Reed. We send out a letter every quarter, right when taxes are due.
Fantastic. Well, with that, on that note, we unfortunately are out of time. Reed, thank you so much for being on and talking about this. I know it's a hot topic and top of everybody's mind, and it's not something that's immediately clear on like what to do and how to handle it and what to expect, and it even kind of frame the conversation in your head. So it was just really, really good stuff. And I'm sure a lot of people got a lot out of it. But for those who want to get more out of you or work with you on this particular topic, where can they go? How can they find you?
Yeah, pretty simple. itvaluations.com is our website. And you can either call us as you can connect via email that way, or read at itvaluations.com. We'll get you to me.
Fantastic.
Or the phone number I listed earlier.
You can use that phone number. And of course, if you want to see Reed in person, Reed will be in Chicago, correct, Rich?
I am now.
Or in May?
I'm not certain if we've got him signed up again. You may have missed your window to see him, but we do have, I do know, we have a whole series of articles by Reed coming to our website. The first 2 installments of that just arrived in my inbox this week. They're getting edited now. So stay tuned to channelpronetwork.com, because we've got a series coming this year with his thinking around M&A.
Fantastic.
Oh, yeah, there was that big dinner you were sponsoring at Alinea, Reed.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah. How do you spell that again? So
channelpronetwork.com, that's where you'll find more Reed and perhaps more opportunities down the road. So Reed, thank you so much for coming on, and we will absolutely have you back in the future. With that, we're going to take a short break. Barb will be joining us on the other side for a little post breakdown of the show, a little bit of fun, and who knows, lots more to come. You'll just have to stick around to find out. We will be right back. And we are back now with part 3 of this episode of ChannelPro Weekly. Rich, Reed Warren is just an amazing guy. He really is. It was great having him on. A lot of really interesting things to talk about. Rich, did you want to highlight anything from that conversation that you found particularly interesting?
It just, as you were speaking there, what comes to mind, I did a webinar earlier this year with Nancy Sabino, who we've had on the show before, and we were she sold her business last year. We were kind of talking about that process, and the sort of key thing that she did, the thing that she's happiest she did in that process, was hiring a consultant to work with and to get like a real valuation for what the business was worth. And like listening to Reed, you really sort of understand why, if you're going down that road, the M&A road, it makes a ton of sense to find a very good consultant to work with on that, because there's just a lot to know, and people like Reed are just immersed in that. They can really kind of help you sort your way through it. And if you try to figure it out on your own, you're likely to make a mistake.
Yeah, I didn't realize how long of a process and a journey that really is to do. I always just kind of had it in my head that, you decide to sell your business, you make some calls, and then like 2 black SUVs find a parking lot somewhere, and a guy brings a briefcase full of money, and you do an exchange, and then it's all done. And apparently that's not how it works. So I need to stop watching TV, I think. So Barb, did you find anything particularly interesting or enlightening out of that conversation?
Yes, I have a question to ask for Rich so that we can do the whole reverse questions. Is now a good time to do it?
Well, we'll do that in just a second.
Okay.
And we'll have to set that up. But I was going to say, was there anything in our conversation with Reed that you kind of found interesting that you wanted to highlight?
I loved everything that Reed had to say. I enjoyed the conversation between the two of us because we kind of broke it down into the segments of your growth as an MSP, where you're going to be at. You're going to be at sub 1 million. You're going to be there for a little bit. You're going to cross that $1 million mark. And then you're going to be, you're going to be hitting the 1 million to like 5 million, and that's another hump and hurdle. And then from there, you're going to grow. And once you are going through that process, those are going to be your 3 pivotal points in your career as an MSP owner, where you're going to ask yourself, should I stay or should I grow? And I feel that Reed did a great job as to going through the business journey of growth and acquisitions through that. I actually really enjoyed that.
Very good thing to highlight. Yeah, I think it was awesome stuff, and I could watch you two talk to all day long. Like it was that was the Barbara Paluszkiewicz interview. It was great how you're doing that. And since you're doing such a good job, we're gonna take a normal game that we do, and we're gonna do something a little different this week. So this is the first time we've ever done this. Hopefully it goes well. But instead of us asking Barb 5 questions about anything and everything, the tables are going to be turned, and Barb is going to ask us 5 questions. This should be interesting. But of course, I warned her that she needs to be prepared to answer the questions as well, because of course we want to learn a little bit more about Barb as well. So this will be interesting. We're turning the show over to you, Barb. 5 questions.
Okay. Question number 1. What are you watching on Netflix?
So I am most of the way through Made right now. I've got like 3 or 4 episodes left.
Interesting. I can answer that one too, because that's a pretty easy one. So the show I'm watching right now is Travelers. It's kind of like a weird time travel story. I'm kind of in the first season, so I'm not really sure where they're going, but it's interesting. And would I recommend it? I maybe would recommend it. Rich, have you seen that one?
I haven't heard of that one, actually. I'll go look it up.
Yeah, interesting. And I'll throw one more out there for you, Barb, in case you want another one. I also watched another one. I'm in the gym a lot, so like I get to burn through Netflix series all the time. I watched one that was just bizarre. It was called Lock and Key. Have you seen this one, Rich?
No.
So this one's weird. It was like the whole premise of the story, Barb, is that like there's this house and they have like magical keys that do all kinds of weird stuff. And there's these kids that use them, but like the creativity of what they do with these keys, like you can stick it in the back of your neck and turn it, and then you can like enter your own brain and stuff. It's just really, really weird stuff. but it was entertaining. So I'll just put those two out there. And Barb, what are you watching on Netflix?
Oh, I just started watching Taboo, which is very interesting. It is about the establishment of the Canadian and American borders and the British. So it's a period piece. It's not something that I would normally watch, but the main character is really sexy, so it caught my eye.
It's amazing. There's so much content on there. It's amazing that like we could get totally different suggestions, and like I may never have seen or heard of that one. So good question and good way to find something new to watch. All right, question number 2.
Would you rather watch 2.5 Men or Seinfeld if you have to watch a whole series from beginning to end?
I'll answer that one first. Seinfeld all the way. One of my favorite shows. One of my favorite shows ever. In fact, Rich, we had a discussion about this not all that long ago, about some of our favorite TV shows. Not on the show. This was more of a personal conversation that we were having, but Seinfeld is absolutely one of my top shows. Rich?
Yeah, I mean, it's the same thing. Yeah, I kind of like the idea actually of and now we can do that on Netflix. We can watch all of Seinfeld. So yeah, Seinfeld, definitely.
And Barb, where do you fall on the whole 2.5 Men Seinfeld argument?
I'm on the fence. That's why I asked the question, because Charlie's really making me laugh like a lot. And Seinfeld always makes me laugh too. So I'm stuck in the middle.
It's a hard one. They're two completely different styles of humor too, so that does make it difficult. But I would give the nod to Seinfeld personally.
Right. Apple or Android? Apple or Android?
Well, I'll go there. And for folks who are watching on video, here's my iPhone. Here's my Apple Watch. The iPad is somewhere around here as well. So yeah, Apple.
Rich is an Apple guy for sure. I am not an Apple person at all. I have one Apple product in the house. It is an old Mac Mini that I played around with for a while. I can't remember even how I ended up with it. I got it for some reason, and never convinced. So I guess I'm an Android person, even though actually I really don't even like Android all that much either. I was, Barb, a Windows Phone fan, which I know is weird, but I use, and Rich had a Windows Phone for a while too, so he knows that, but it was a great interface. I loved it. And if Microsoft still made it, I'd probably still be using it. However, I did not like that there was a dearth of apps for it. It was really not a well-supported platform. It's the only thing I didn't like about it, but the interface, the OS was great. So that was my lost love, but I guess I'm an Android person now. Barb, what are you?
I have an Apple phone. I have an Apple Watch, and the only reason why I have an Apple Watch, is because during COVID, the battery in my watch died and everything was shut down. And I couldn't get a replacement battery, but I could order a new phone off of a new watch off of Apple.com, and that's how I have an Apple Watch, because I still haven't gone to the jeweler to get the battery replaced. So that's right. Okay.
All right. Next question.
Do you eat in the car? Like a meal, like, do you eat while you're driving? Like, will you take like the Starbucks and, will you eat your like egg bites or sandwich and like drink, or you have a burger and fries in your lap and like,
yeah, I'll answer this one first, Rich. I'll take it on. I do. I try not to, but I have two very, very active kids that are in a whole bunch of stuff, and driving around is just part of that life. And sometimes there's no choice but to eat in the car. But I try to be smart about what I order if I'm going to eat in the car. So because some things are just impossible to eat while you're actually driving. So you got to be careful. Now, Rich, you don't strike me as an eat in the car kind of guy.
And I'm not, although it's not a matter of principle, really. I mean, coffee in the car, absolutely. But yeah, if we're talking about like a burrito or a hamburger or something like that, if the car's in motion, I just don't feel like I'm going to be driving or eating well. So yeah, I don't do that too often.
Barbara, are you known to cruise down the highway with a Big Mac in hand?
I'm always on the go, and I have kids. I have mastered the art of eating a burger in my hand. The French fries, they get me because it gets all over like the steering wheel and things like that. I am challenged though because I do like to eat. I like ketchup on my fries, but essentially I can't dip because that just turns out to be a disaster because I always like drip on myself. My kids, going to and from events. Yes, we'd be like eating in the car because it's two birds with one stone. They get home, they're tired, they're full, they can go to bed. I remember my son though, he's a finicky eater, and he was eating in the car, and his burger was falling apart, and he was freaking out, and he was saying, "I'm hungry." And I was just like, "If you're hungry, then eat the burger." And he was just like, "I can't." And I was just like, in that case, and I remember I like rolled down the window and I just took it, and I was just like, "There it goes, but you don't have to eat it." And he was just like, oh. And then a couple of days later, we were at gymnastics, and there was a burger like on the ground, and he saw it. He's like, "Oh, that was a mad mommy." And I was just like, okay, I'll never do that again. But it made me, yes, I eat the car.
All right, I'm going to cheat though. I'm going to add a question of my own. So I'm cheating. Okay. I'm already screwing this up. What is your preferred fast food item to eat while driving?
Starbucks egg white egg bites.
I have never had those.
Oh, they're pretty good. They're salty though. Yeah.
Ooh, I do like salty.
They're there's a lot of protein, low in calories. They do give you a fork, but they're small enough where it's almost like a 2-bite brownie. You can just like plop it in, and they're good to go. That's usually my staple. I told my kids that when they grow up and they're trying to reminisce of mother's cooking, that they're gonna hit a Starbucks. They're just like, "Oh yeah, this is what mom's food tastes like." What about you?
To eat while actually driving. I think. Oh boy, that's actually a hard question because I would probably say we end up at. We got kids. We end up at McDonald's a lot. But I don't order. I think I like breakfast sandwiches. Well, easiest to eat while Taco Bell is probably actually the easiest to eat while driving if you get the right thing, like in the burrito category. but I do like a good like chicken sandwich. Those aren't too bad. You can eat those on the go pretty easily. Anything that just doesn't fall apart. Subway in the car does not work though. I did learn the hard way.
That is true. So now that we're talking about food, did you have the McDonald's Shamrock Shake?
No, I don't like those.
Oh my God,
I know I'm weird, but I don't like those.
Oh my goodness. I so look forward to them at St. Patrick's Day. That's like they used to have the orange one too when I was younger, but I don't know if they have that one anymore, but that's my favorite. And now since we're talking about chicken sandwiches, this is like the 5.5 question. Popeyes or KFC?
Oh.
Popeyes.
I would also go Popeyes. They have a pretty incredible chicken sandwich.
I like the KFC one. The breast isn't that big, so you can whereas Popeyes is pretty like honking.
It's big. Yeah, it's a big one. That's for sure. Well, okay. So, all right. So I'm going to reverse the question on you. Popeyes or KFC in your case, or Chick-fil-A?
We don't have Chick-fil-A in Canada.
Oh, okay. Okay. So that's, have you ever had it while you're down in the States?
Yes, I didn't like it. It was too greasy. The last trip that I went on, I brought my son because, he's an heir to all of this, and I would really like him to learn sales and marketing because I feel he's natural. And the whole point of him coming on this trip, like his condition of employment, so to say, he gave me a list: In-N-Out Burger, Chick-fil-A, Sonic, Burger. There were all of these other ones that we went to, and it was brutal for me. And I just said, my jeans better fit me, like, when I could get home, like that's all that matters, because it was so much fast food. It was actually CompTIA when we went to Palm Springs in August. It was all fast food. Like the kid was in heaven, and I was just like, oh my God, like, I need water.
There's so much salt, if you eat a lot of fast food, it's just so salty that it adds up.
Yes.
But very interesting stuff. So we could probably, this was fun. Rich, I think we should do this sometimes. We have to be very careful on time because it seems like we could go on this all day long. So Barb, great questions. Lots of fun. Someone's got to be the first, and you were the first who flipped this kind of segment on its head. So I think it was successful. We'll do it again. Thank you for setting a high bar for others to follow.
Thank you for having me. You guys have been great.
Awesome stuff. Well, we won't say goodbye quite yet because Rich, this is the time of the show where he grabs his crystal ball, looks inside, tell us what we might have missed and what might be coming in the future. What's in the future, Rich?
Well, before we get to the future, how about some stuff that happened in the news this week that maybe you didn't see? You can go to channelpronetwork.com every Friday. Look for our In Case You Missed It post written by our own James Gaskin to catch up news from the week that was. This week, James is going to have some news from the processor world from both AMD and NVIDIA, some new hyperconverged infrastructure products from Cisco, and one more reason not to throw away those old comic books, people. It could be a multi-million-dollar mistake. James will tell you all about that. Looking ahead to next week, TD SYNNEX is going to be doing the meeting of its Varnex community out in Greenville, South Carolina. I will be attending that, actually. My first visit to Greenville, and I really like Greenville. It's first visit in 3 years, and can't wait to get back. Aruba, who we were talking about before, they're doing their annual event, Aruba Atmosphere, next week. There's an IOTSA show, the IoT Security Association in Austin, Texas, and a little VoIP news, a little partner program news. I can't tell you too much more than that, but I'm sure we'll be talking about it on the show next week.
Awesome stuff, folks. You aren't going to want to miss it, so make sure that you subscribe to the ChannelPro Weekly podcast everywhere. Podcasts are delivered. We're on Google, Apple, Spotify, Stitcher. You can easily find it anywhere you go. If you like to watch, we are on YouTube. You can subscribe there, hit the bell, hit the like button, do all those things that are good, and leave a comment, and you will not regret it. Do both. Why not, right? A double dose of ChannelPro Weekly every single week. And of course, channelpronetwork.com is the place you should be going each and every week. Set it as your homepage. There you'll find the latest white papers, news, downloads, resources, all kinds of great stuff to not only keep you informed of what's going on in the industry, but also help you make more money and make your business better. And that is what it's all about, folks. It is an awesome resource. Make sure you don't miss it. Our guest today was the CEO of CDN Technologies, the wonderful Barbara Paluszkiewicz. Thank you so much for being on, Barb. I hope you had fun.
I did. Thank you so much. It's always a pleasure. I'm truly honored to be back again. Thank you, Rich. Thank you, Matt.
It is great to have you here, and I promise you it will not be the last time. You will absolutely be invited back again in the future, because you're just such a dynamic person, and so smart, and have great insights and everything, and are very, very well spoken, I should say. So all of that cold calling stuff paid off back in the day. So you've got a book. We'll put a link to the book in the show description for the show. The podcast is called what?
No Tech Talk, and that's KNOW. Tips, advice, and consulting from your business's IT department. And
is there a particular platform where they can get that, or is it kind of everywhere?
It's everywhere.
Okay.
They could go to cdntechnologies.com/podcast. It's there. It's on iTunes. It's on Spotify. It's on Google Play. It's hosted with Libsyn, so they give you the little dots afterwards to check off where you want to push this out to. So it's all there.
Awesome stuff. And if for those who maybe want to get in touch with you, learn more about you, strike up a business deal with you, sell you their company, how can they get a hold of you?
CDNtechnologies.com. They can email me direct at barb@cdntechnologies.com, or call us 905-542-9759 and see if you can get past the gatekeeper.
We will see. Just call once, then wait a week, and then call again, and then she'll answer the phone. Awesome stuff. Well, thank you again for being on. It was great, and we'll absolutely have you back again in the future. And speaking of the future, Rich, who do we got coming up next week?
Next week, and I believe this is the first time we've ever had him on the show, which is hard to believe. Stanley Lewison is going to be with us, our guest host. And then I saw him in Newark. I was like, Stanley, we got to get you on the podcast. And then we're going to have an interview segment with the head of partner revenue strategy at QuickBooks, because they are kind of getting into the partner program world and turning QuickBooks from something that people in our audience use maybe to manage the business into something that they can resell. So we'll explore that with him.
Awesome. It does sound interesting. So again, thanks, Barb. Thanks, Rich, for being on. Thanks to our sponsor, Exclusive Networks, for sponsoring today. We really appreciate that. And we will be back with episode 220 next week. See you then.